Estrela do Sul 2 satellite on board. Launch will take place from Launch Pad 39, and right now, final preparations are in motion by the Telstar 14R mission team. Our launch will take place at 1:15 a.m. in Baikonur, which is 3:15 p.m. here at the ILS Broadcast Center in Washington, D.C. Today's ILS Proton launch is a collaborative effort between ILS, International Launch Services, its customer, Telesat, and satellite manufacturer, Space Systems Loral. It is now 12:45 a.m. in Baikonur and 2:45 p.m. here in Washington, D.C. Stay tuned. The Telstar 14R countdown begins now. Thank you for joining us for today's highly anticipated launch of the Telstar 14R satellite, also known as Estrela do Sul 2. I'm your host, Jennifer Gladstone. I'm joined here at the ILS Broadcast Center by ILS Program Director Russ Prytula. Russ has worked on 10 launch campaigns, and this is his 9th launch at the ILS Anchor Desk. Hi, Russ. Great to see you again.
Hello, Jennifer. It is great to be working with you once again on another ILS Proton launch broadcast.
Now, Russ, as we go through the broadcast, we're going to hear the name Telstar 14R many times, but there is another name for this launch as well. It's Estrela do Sul 2. Explain to us the difference.
Well, a core market for Telstar 14R and its predecessor, Telstar 14, is Brazil, a country that is driving the economic growth of the entire Latin American region. In Brazil, the satellite is called Estrela do Sul 2, which means Southern Star in Portuguese. The satellite also has multiple beams across the Americas, North, Central, and South America, and over the Atlantic Ocean region. In these markets, the satellite is known as Telstar 14R.
All right. Thank you so much. Clears that up for us. And now let's learn a little more about today's ILS Proton launch. This will be the 364th Proton launch overall since Proton's first flight in 1965 and the 65th ILS Proton launch. This is the first ILS Proton launch of 2011. The satellite operator for today's launch is Telesat, headquartered in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. This will be the 7th Telesat satellite launched on an ILS Proton. The satellite manufacturer is Space Systems Loral, based in Palo Alto, California. This will be the 17th Space Systems Loral satellite launched on an ILS Proton. Now let's take a moment to hear from the President of International Launch Services, Frank McKenna, who was interviewed earlier with Dan Goldberg, President and CEO of Telesat.
In the last several years, the consolidation at Krunichev has increased the production and throughput at the facility from 5 and 6 launches that we had in 2005 and 2006 up to 12 launches last year in 2010. This year we'll launch 7 to 8 commercial missions, and there'll be approximately 4 to 5 federal missions. However, it'll be in a more compressed time frame. It'll be between May and December this year. That's a significant increase in production capability and quality. In order to accommodate that, we've implemented new capability, the second processing facility. That facility will allow us to launch on 15-day centers, creating additional value and capability for our customers as the market dynamics demand.
We've got a fantastic relationship with the people at both ILS and Krunichev, and we come to them repeatedly because of their heritage and fundamentally because of the performance that we get.
The ILS partnership with Telesat dates back to 1999 with the launch of Nimiq 1.
We've come to them time and time again really because they've delivered for Telesat. They've delivered for us at a good value.
Today, the launch of Telstar 14R will be the 7th satellite that we've launched for Telesat.
Telstar 14R is about twice the size of the satellite that it's replacing, Telstar 14. It's an all Ku-band satellite with 5 different beams, providing our customers in these really fast-growing areas just much better, higher quality, more powerful capacity than the satellite that Telstar 14R is replacing.
This satellite was really important to have a replacement up on orbit in time, and actually with the satellite being delivered 2 months ahead of schedule by Space Systems Loral, we're able to launch 2 months ahead of the original schedule.
Building and launching a satellite is certainly something that is a complex undertaking, and it only happens successfully if the operator has good, strong partners that they're working with. We've worked with Space Systems Loral also now on a number of missions. We were very focused on making sure that we achieved our schedule, and here Loral really performed for us. I'd like to thank the team at Telesat. They always do a fantastic job supporting us, supporting our partners.
So we look forward to an ongoing and continuing partnership with Telesat and doing great things in the future. Thank you for joining us today for the ILS Proton launch of the Telstar 14R satellite for Telesat of Ottawa, Canada, a leading global fixed satellite service operator with offices and facilities around the world. This will be our 7th launch with Telesat and our first ILS Proton launch this year. This is also the 364th launch of the Heritage Proton vehicle since the first flight in July of 1965. And to date, Proton has launched 29 successful consecutive missions since mid-2008. Another special achievement with this mission will be the 17th spacecraft manufactured by Space Systems Loral to be launched on an ILS Proton. Telsat's Telstar 14R satellite was built on the Space Systems Loral flight-proven 1300 platform and weighs over 5 metric tons, replacing Telstar 14 Estrella de Sol at the orbital location of 63 degrees west. Telstar 14R will provide expanded and enhanced services throughout the Americas and the Atlantic Ocean region. So whether you're watching us on the television, via the web, in Canada or in the US, or if you're watching the Proton live in Kazakhstan at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, I will close with this final message for the mission. Go Proton, go Breeze-M, go Telstar 14R.
The ILS Proton mission for the Telstar 14R satellite will take 9 hours and 13 minutes from liftoff to placement into geostationary transfer orbit. Now let's take a look at the Telstar 14R mission profile.
The following is the description of the mission flight profile of the ILS Proton rocket with the Telstar 14R communication satellite on board. As the ILS Proton lifts off from its launch pad, it immediately executes a roll maneuver to align its flight launch azimuth to 61.3 degrees in order to achieve a parking orbit inclination of 51.5 degrees as it travels eastward. The first 3 stages function to propel the orbital unit to a suborbital trajectory. The orbital unit consists of the Breeze-M payload adapter system and the Telstar 14R satellite. The sequence starts with the ignition of the powerful first stage engines that output 10.5 meganewtons, or 2.4 million pounds of thrust at sea level, which is equivalent to the thrust power of 9 Airbus 380 commercial jets at takeoff. The engines fire for about 2 minutes, during which time the ILS Proton experiences maximum dynamic pressure, and then the first stage separates from the rest of the vehicle. The second stage engines follow with nearly 2.4 meganewtons of thrust for 3.5 minutes, and then the third stage engine fires with 583 kilonewtons of thrust for 4 minutes. The payload fairing is separated soon after third stage ignition, high above the Earth's dense atmosphere. The drop zones for each of the stages and the payload fairing have been predetermined for minimal impact to specified areas. At stage 3 separation, the orbital unit has traveled from Baikonur to Russia near the eastern edge of Kazakhstan at 51.5 degrees north latitude, which corresponds to the parking orbit inclination and is moving about 7,300 meters per second, or 4.5 miles per second relative velocity. The upper stage of the ILS Proton rocket is called the Breeze-M and is designed to inject payloads into a wide variety of target orbits. The first Breeze-M burn occurs 2 minutes after the third stage separation, when the orbital unit is still in a suborbital trajectory. The burn is in the direction of the velocity vector, and will last long enough to achieve a low Earth circular parking orbit of 173 kilometers. This 4.5-minute burn spans from Siberia to Russia's east coast. The second BRIES-M burn centers the ascending node of the first orbit, whereby the orbital unit crosses the equatorial plane as it travels from south to north. The resulting elliptical orbit is called the intermediate orbit. This 17.8-minute burn spans from South Atlantic 800 miles east of Rio de Janeiro to Libya. A little over 2 hours after the second burn, the third BRIES-M burn starts. Soon after this burn shuts down, the depleted auxiliary propellant tank is jettisoned, and the fourth BRIES-M burn begins. Just like the second burn, these two combined burns center the ascending node of the second orbit. The resulting orbit is called the transfer orbit, where the apogee is greatly increased to closely match the geosynchronous altitude. These two burns add up to 17.6 minutes and span from South Pacific 200 miles west of Santiago, Chile, to 400 miles west of Morocco. During the coast phases, the BRIES-M performs attitude maneuvers in order for the Telstar 14R's solar arrays to be exposed to the sun at a predetermined solar illumination angle, which is designed to satisfy its thermal and power requirements. The fifth and final BRIES-M burn occurs at the apogee in the descending node of the transfer orbit. This is where the orbital unit will perform a big plane change maneuver from 49 degrees to 13.8 degrees inclination and increase its perigee to almost 9,000 kilometers in an 8.8-minute burn. About 12.5 minutes later, the Telstar 14R satellite is separated from the BRIES-M to reach its targeted geostationary transfer orbit. The total mission time from launch to spacecraft separation is approximately 9 hours and 13 minutes.
The first burn of the BRIES-M upper stage is scheduled for completion about 16 minutes into the flight. Our broadcast will conclude after that burn, since the rocket will be out of range of our tracking station, and we will not receive any updates at that time.
Remember, you can stay up to date on the Telstar 14R mission by visiting the ILS website, ilslaunch.com, or by following us on Twitter and by liking us on Facebook. In the U.S. and Canada, you can also call the ILS Launch Hotline at 1-800-852-4980 for mission updates. We are now about 19 minutes away from liftoff from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. The Telstar 14R satellite has been on a journey that takes it from concept to launch pad. Let's take a closer look now at part of that journey.
It usually takes about 2 years for the launch vehicle and satellite to be built, tested, and shipped to the launch site. Typically, from crew and spacecraft arrival, it takes 5 to 7 weeks to complete the launch campaign. Today's launch campaign started with the main team arrival in Baikonur. The spacecraft arrived aboard an Antonov cargo jet at Yubileyny Airfield. The spacecraft is offloaded from the plane and placed onto a railroad car. The thermally controlled rail car is hooked up to maintain the proper environmental conditions for the spacecraft during the 6-hour trip to the launch processing facilities. Once in the high bay, the spacecraft team does a series of system tests and other standalone operations, including fueling the spacecraft. Fueling of the spacecraft was then completed. The satellite is then mated to the BRIES-M upper stage and then rotated horizontally to be encapsulated in the payload fairing in Hall 101. The spacecraft fairing and upper stage are now referred to as the Ascent Unit. The entire assembly is mated to the booster stages of the Proton launch vehicle in Hall 111. The integrated launch vehicle was rolled to the BRIES-M fueling station, where fueling of the BRIES-M was completed. The complete rocket rolled out to Launch Pad 39, where the entire vehicle is turned up vertical from the railcar by large hydraulic erectors. Then the service towers moved in to protect the vehicle. As this is going on, it also provides a good opportunity for the mission team and customers to have pictures taken with a rocket in the background. Per Russian tradition, rollout always occurs at exactly 6:30 in the morning, corresponding with the time the vehicle for Yuri Gagarin rolled out in 1961. And this rollout was no exception.
We are 15.5 minutes away from launch in Baikonur, but in the meantime, we want to welcome you to our newest feature of our ILS launch broadcast, the interactive touchscreen. And what we'd like to do now is show you the ILS Proton in an expanded form to give you an opportunity to understand how the rocket is constructed for flight. Russ?